I want to take it back in time, the 15th of February 2025, 8 months ago, when I got the keys to my first house at the age of 25 after deciding I was going to renovate it on my own with no experience whilst working full time. Fast forward to now, and the first room is almost complete, and it's a big one, the kitchen. But it wasn't straightforward. In fact, it was more difficult than I ever expected. And I'm not even talking about the fact that my new kitchen used to be 2 separate rooms. It used to have a second front door leading to it. There used to be a small window in the corner, and I had to dig out the whole concrete floor by hand. I'll get onto all of these things soon, but the journey started with a pretty standard clear out, or so I thought. The old owner left absolutely everything in the house, which I did know before I got the keys. What I didn't know is that it included over 1-year-old food waste. I've never smelled anything worse. Once everything was gone, it was time for me to take out the old small rundown kitchen, then have my first leak whilst disconnecting the old washing machine before I ripped out all the cupboards in the old utility room. All the usable appliances were sold on Marketplace or given to charity. I took off all the tile on the walls in the old kitchen, had an electrician come to disconnect an old extractor fan, and had my second leak before I started stripping the wallpaper in the kitchen, all within the first 2 weeks of getting the keys. But then it started to get exciting. I had a structural engineer come to check if I could knock the wall down between the kitchen and utility, found that it wasn't load bearing, so got the electrician back out to disconnect the light switch and plug sockets on that wall. Oh yeah, the kitchen also had polystyrene tiles that I had to remove, and the walls all had old vinyl stuck to them, which was hell to remove. Then the big day came. Time to knock down the wall between the kitchen and utility and turn it into one open space. All of the vinyl flooring in the kitchen utility then came up, and I found cracking and bulging in the floor, a sign of what was to come. Turns out all of my downstairs floor was suffering from a sulfate attack. I started getting quotes for doing the work. A company told me £26,000, so I decided I was going to do it myself with the help of a few friends and family. I rented a breaker and started breaking up all the concrete. But before that work could be finished, I had some professional builders in to replace a concrete window lintel, and as part of that work, I had them remove one of the 2 front doors, the one that led into the kitchen, break up half the void and replace the other half with a window. The small window that was also in the corner of the utility also got bricked up. Once that was done and the concrete floor was all broken up, it was time to use gorilla buckets to carry it all outside. The subfloor was full of old bricks of all shapes and sizes, which made the job so much harder. After weeks of working on the floor, it was then time to level it, whacker plate it, and start to build up the floor with hardcore before putting down DPM. Whilst all this floor work was going on, I had my first few kitchen appointments and started to plan out the future space. The next step was to get my concrete slab laid, but I let the professionals handle this. And once the concrete had set, it was time to rip down all the old plasterboard ceilings and de-nail them before my first fixed plumbing and electric started. My next project was to prep all my kitchen walls for plastering by removing old flaky paint, then rolling a blue grit mix onto the surfaces. There were also some areas of old plaster that I had to use an STS drill to take off and then prep those surfaces too. Given I'd taken down my ceilings, it was only right to insulate the joist next. Then a plasterer came in and started the work on boarding out the kitchen before skimming it all. At this point, it finally started to feel like an actual room for the first time, but my floor still wasn't anywhere near finished. So I cut the plasterboards that had been dabbed in the kitchen to the final floor level they need to be at, and then my insulation boards for my floor arrived, and it was time to start laying these down. I also decided, given all the work I was doing with my floor, I may as well put down underfloor heating. So that's exactly what I did after laying out a membrane for them to sit on. That finally meant my screed was ready to be laid, which finally brought my floor up to its almost final height. Once set, the DPM and excess perimeter insulation then needed cutting back before it was time for mist coating. Once mist coating was finished, my electrician came back for my second fix electrics and gave me light before I started to paint all of my kitchen and then laying the flooring. It turns out you aren't meant to put a kitchen on a floating floor, so adjustments had to be made in the end. Which brings us to the kitchen install and to today. The kitchen has now been installed and looks beautiful. The space has been completely transformed from 2 old rundown rooms to 1 bright and open space. There's still loads of snagging jobs to do in here, and I still have the whole rest of the house to do. So follow here to follow my journey, but also don't forget that I upload weekly long form YouTube videos and I live stream some of the renovation on twitch.tv/BenjiGS.